بسم الله إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم. So we're continuing our discussion about the biography of Al-Imaam Ash-Shawkaanee, because the fiqh book we're going to be studying from, Ad-Durar fil Masail al-Fiqhiyya, is the author of it is Al-Imaam Muhammad ibn Ali Ash-Shawkaanee. Okay, and we already said about him before, and just reviewing real quickly, that he was from Yemen, and he was of the great scholars of Yemen. He was born on the 28th of Dhul-Qa'dah in the year 1172 Hijri. Okay, which corresponds to 1759 in the Christian era, common era, 1759. Okay, and he was born in a town called Shawkaan, just outside of the capital city of Sana'a, which is the capital of Yemen. And he grew up in Sana'a under the care of his father, and he memorized the Qur'an and many books of Islamic knowledge, and he studied fiqh, and he studied hadith, and many of the Arabic language, usul al-fiqh, and many of the Islamic sciences. Okay, so next we want to talk about, in reference to his biography, his madhab. And what did we say madhab is? Madhab means a school. Literally, madhab comes from the word dhahaba yadhabu. Dhahaba is a past verb. It means to go. Yadhabu means he is going. Dhihab means to go. All right. Madhab means the way you go about something, the path that you take to get somewhere. That's called madhab. Okay. But when we talk about the science of fiqh, when we say madhab, it means the person's understanding, or their school, or their understanding of Islamic jurisprudence, their understanding of the science that deals with the laws of applying the acts of worship and the transactions in fiqh, what we call fiqh, which that's what fiqh deals with. Laws of mu'amalat wal ibadat, transactions and acts of worship within the Islamic Sharia, the Islamic law. So madhab means his school of Islamic fiqh, his school of Islamic jurisprudence, his understanding of fiqh. Okay, and of course we said aqeedah. Aqeedah, we studied aqeedah in the first semester of the course, which aqeedah deals with the beliefs, what one believes. Okay, what means your firm belief, what your creed of beliefs are. Okay, so we talk about his madhab and his aqeedah of Al-Imaam Ash-Shawkaanee. So it says يعتبر الإمام الشوكاني من كبار العلماء الداعين إلى التمسك بالكتاب والسنة ونبذ التعصب لأقوال الرجال المخالفة لهما، وقد ألف في ذلك الرسالة سماها القول المفيد في حكم التقليد. Okay, so Imam Ash-Shawkaanee, he is considered from the major scholars, the kibar ulama, the major scholars, who call to adhering to the Qur'an, the book, which is the Qur'an, and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and getting rid of bigoted adherence to the statements and opinions of men that contradict these two sources. Okay, so Imam Ash-Shawkaanee was against following opinions and blind following people's opinions and statements and so forth that did not agree with the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Okay, he was someone who he did not believe. He called the people away from superstitious beliefs and corrupt ideologies and blindly following culture and things like that, to only let's follow that Islam is from the Qur'an and the Sunnah, and these are the sources of Islam. And he was one of the major scholars in the history of Islam who pushed and strove to educate the Muslims and spread the knowledge of the Qur'an and the Sunnah, and to warn the Muslims away from following opinions and views of people that went against the Qur'an and the Sunnah, no matter how great or lofty or how special those people were. This is saints. He's a saint, or he's a righteous holy man, or this person. Do you know who he is? He's scholar so and so. Imam Ash-Shawkaanee didn't care about anything like that. He said, no, if it's not from the Qur'an and the Sunnah, this is the sources of our religion. And if the person's opinions and ideas, or whatever his ideology or what he's calling to, is against the Qur'an and the Sunnah, then we don't follow it. We throw it away. Okay. So he was like in the forefront of calling to the adhering to Islam in the original way. Okay, and he wrote a book regarding that, a treatise, and he called it al-Qawl al-Mufid fi hukm al-Taqlid, which means the beneficial statement regarding the ruling of blind following. So in reference to his aqeedah, أما عقيدته فعقيدة السلف من وجوب حمل صفات الله تعالى الواردة في القرآن الكريم والسنة النبوية الصحيحة على ظاهرها من غير تأويل ولا تحريف ولا تمثيل. So in reference to his Aqeedah, his creed of beliefs, Imam Ash-Shawkaanee, he was upon the Aqeedah, his beliefs were the beliefs of the Salaf. Okay? The Salaf meaning the Sahaba, the companions of Prophet Muhammad and their students. So he believed in the same beliefs that were held by the companions of Prophet Muhammad and what they taught to their students. In regards to how they interpreted the attributes of Allah that have come in the Qur'an and the prophetic Sunnah, the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad according to their obvious meanings, without reinterpreting the meanings to mean something else. We're talking about Allah's attributes. Or distorting the meanings to mean something else. Or likening the meanings of Allah's attributes to those of His creatures. He was against all of that. Okay, he was upon the Aqeedah of the Salaf. The Salaf meaning the Prophet's companions and their students. His belief was the same as the beliefs of the early Muslims. And also, he also called people away from worshiping graves. Imam Ash-Shawkaanee he called people away from grave worship. Okay, Ibadatul Qubur, worshiping graves and worshiping people in the graves and stuff like this, and considering people in the graves to be holy and worshiping people in the graves. And he was against constructing shrines over the burial sites of holy people. He called against all of this, which all of that is aspects of shirk. Aspects of shirk, okay? So, in reference to what happened to him in his history, he was appointed as a judge in the city of Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. Okay, and he was appointed to be the head judge. We say Rais al-Qadah, the chief justice of Sana'a in the year 1209 Hijri. And he did not have any desire for that position because he was very busy teaching his students, and he considered that his life calling was to teach students, to educate. So he liked to teach. He had his students; they would come around him, gather around him, and he would teach in the masajid, in the masjids in Sana'a. Okay, but he was invited to be and asked by the government, the rulers, the government there, to become the head judge of the country. So when he was requested to be the judge, he continued having doubts about it, and he prayed Salatul Istikhara, meaning seeking the good choice from Allah. He, making this a special prayer you pray. We'll talk about it when we get later farther in this book of Fiqh, when we get to the section of the Salat, Kitab al-Salat. But he prayed this special prayer where you seek the good from Allah. You make a decision. You seek the good of Allah. You make dua to Allah after praying 2 rakahs to bring you closer to that which is good for you in this life and your hereafter and so forth. And if it is bad for you, to keep it away from you and turn you away from it and so forth, etc. Okay. And so he made shura. He consulted with the other virtuous scholars of his time. He asked their advice. Okay, so the other scholars suggested that he take the position because they feared someone taking the position who was not trustworthy regarding the religion nor qualified in knowledge. So because he was a trustworthy person, and even the other scholars in his time looked at him to be a righteous person and a good man, and he was one who was qualified in reference to his abilities, in reference to knowledge, they suggested that he should take the position. So which he did. In reference to mu'allafatuhu, his writings, okay, he wrote many books in various subjects. One of the most important and well-known of them, the most important and well-known of them are the ones we're going to mention here. The first being Nail al-Awtar, Sharh al-Muntaqa al-Akhbar. Okay, this is a book that has hadith that particularly pertain to fiqh. Okay, fiqh matters, but it's a collection of hadith. Nail al-Awtar. And he has explanations. He gives some explanations to these matters, fiqh hadith related to fiqh issues. Okay. Then he also wrote Fath-ul-Qadeer, which is a well-known tafsir. Tafsir means an explanation of the Qur'an. Okay. Matter of fact, I have it. Fath-ul-Qadeer. It's about 5 volumes in Arabic. Okay. So he explained the Qur'an. So he wrote a book of tafsir explaining each verse of the Qur'an. Giving an explanation of the Qur'an. Also, he wrote a book called Al-Badr al-Tali'. Al-Badr al-Tali' is a biographical account of the great Yemeni scholars who lived after the 7th century Hijri. Okay, so that's a book of Rijal, Ilm al-Rijal, knowing who are the scholars of the land of Yemen. He wrote a book, a biographical account, meaning he wrote their life story. Who are these people, the scholars of Yemen? Okay, and wrote about each of them. Okay, then he did Tuhfat al-Dhakirin, Sharh Uddat al-Hisn al-Hasin, which is a 1-volume commentary on the collection Uddat al-Hisn al-Hasin, which is a collection of hadiths. We could say ahadith al-adhkar, hadiths related to words of dhikr. They can make remembrance of Allah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, subhanallahi wa bihamdihi wa subhanallahi al-azim. These are words to remember Allah. So there's a book called Uddat al-Hisn al-Hasin, by a scholar who named Ibn al-Jazari. He collected hadith related to discuss words of dhikr, to remember Allah. So Imam Ash-Shawkaanee wrote a sharh, an explanation of that book called Tuhfatul Dhakireen. Okay. Also, he wrote a book, Al-Fawaid al-Majmu'a fil Ahadith al-Mawdu'a. Okay, I have this book also. It's a collection of fabricated hadiths. He compiled in one book, in one volume, a collection of hadiths that are unauthentic and fabricated. And he mentioned, and he divided into sections the hadiths about wudu, the tahara, purification. Fabricated hadiths about salat, fabricated hadiths about fasting, fabricated hadiths about hajj, fabricated hadiths about marriage, fabricated hadiths about divorce, fabricated hadiths about this or that, whatever. And he divided into chapters based upon the subjects. And then he mentioned what hadith that he considered to be fabricated and not authentic from the Prophet ﷺ in each of those subjects. And it's collected in this book, Al-Fawaid al-Majmu'a fil Ahadith al-Mawdu'a. Okay. Also, he wrote a book called Irshad al-Fuhul, which is a book on usul al-fiqh, a subject called usul al-fiqh, which is not fiqh, but usul al-fiqh is another subject. Usul al-fiqh deals with the fundamentals of fiqh. This deals with the foundations of fiqh. It deals with how the fiqh laws are derived, how they are derived, how to arrive at laws of fiqh using principles and evidences to reach a conclusion. Okay, certain principles, evidences, proofs and evidences to reach a conclusion. Okay. طيب. So that's Irshad al-Fuhul. He also did ul-Bahiyyah fil Masail al-Fiqhiyah, which is the book I have here in my hand, which is the book we're going to be going through to study this subject of fiqh. Okay, and it is a concise fiqh manual. Okay. Then he also did Ad-Daraaree al-Mudhiyyah, Sharh ul-Bahiyyah fil Masail al-Fiqhiyah, which is his explanation of his fiqh manual, Ad-Durar. Okay, so he wrote this book in fiqh, Ad-Durar, which it doesn't. Ad-Durar doesn't. This is a fiqh manual, concise fiqh manual. It's just a text of divided into categories of the subjects regarding fiqh. Okay, like we said, wudu and tahara and ghusl and all this type of stuff, and salat and different types of prayer and funerals, how the funeral procession is done, and how to pay zakat and what is the rules of zakat, and the laws and regulations regarding that, rules and regulations regarding fasting and so forth, hajj, all of these subjects. Okay. But it's talked about in ul-Bahiyyah fil Masail al-Fiqhiyah, the book we're going. He does not present evidences. Okay, it doesn't have ayat and ahadith, verses of Qur'an or hadith. He's just telling what his conclusion is about these things. For salat, you do this. The obligations are this. The recommended things are this. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Then later on, he wrote Ad-Daraaree al-Mudhiyyah, Sharh ul-Bahiyyah fil Masail al-Fiqhiyah, which is his explanation of this book in more detail, where he gives proofs and evidences about each section. Each section he talks about, okay, I said this, and this is why. And here are the proofs of it. And this, the people who, there's a difference of opinion about it. My opinion is this, because of this. The people who disagree with me, they say that. And these are the imams of fiqh who said the opposite. This was their proof, but we refute them by saying this, such and such and such. And here are my proofs and evidences, blah, 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 blah. And, he explains in detail this book, okay? That book is the book that I studied when I was in Yemen, in the university in Sana'a. When I was in Sharia studies for the first and second semester, we went through that book, Ad-Daraaree al-Mudhiyyah, Sharh ul-Bahiyyah fil Masail al-Fiqhiyah. Okay, all right. Also, he wrote Adab al-Talab wa Muntaha al-Arab, which is advice on the etiquette and manners of one who is seeking Islamic knowledge. And it's just one little volume. I have this book also. It's about etiquettes of seeking knowledge, etiquettes of one who wants to seek Islamic knowledge. Well, he gives some advice to them. Okay. Also, he did Al-Qawl al-Mufid fi Hukm al-Taqleed, which means the beneficial statement regarding the ruling of concerning blind following of others. And so this is an explanation of the ruling regarding blind following, which is called Taqleed, of the opinions of fiqh, the blind following of the fiqh madhabs, the fiqh schools, and its harms. He talks about the harms of doing that. Okay. So in reference to moving on about Al-Imaam Ash-Shawkaanee, regarding his death, Imam Ash-Shawkaanee died on a Tuesday night on the 27th of Jumada al-Akhirah in the year 1250 Hijri, which corresponds to the year 1834. So if we're in the Christian era, this is considered, common era, Gregorian calendar, whatever you say. This is 2013. So then 1913 would have been 100 years ago. 1813 would have been 200 years ago. So he lived about 220 years ago. He died about 220 years ago. Okay, that's just an approximation. Okay, but he lived more than 200 years ago. As you see, maybe about 250 years ago he was living. And may Allah have mercy upon him. He was 75 years old at the time of his death. So then, in reference to Al-Imam Al-Imrani, Sheikh Al-Imrani, back to Al-Imam Ash-Shawkaanee, this is the Sanad, okay? Sheikh Muhammad bin Ismail Al-Imrani was the teacher at the university where he was the one who taught us this book, Ad-Daraaree al-Mudhiyyah. So my professor who taught us this course, he is considered, a very well-known fiqh scholar in Yemen, and he's one of the muftis there in the city of Sana'a. He's very old, probably Sheikh Al-Imrani probably now is probably maybe in his 80s, late 80s or 90, if not 90 years old already. He's very old, elderly. He was elderly back then, and that was, when I was there in Yemen. That was this is 2013. So we were talking about maybe 12 or 13 years ago. I was there. Okay, so he says between him there are only three scholars between him and Al-Imaam Ash-Shawkaanee, meaning the guy who taught me this book, Sheikh Al-Imrani. He had three teachers between him and Al-Imaam Ash-Shawkaanee himself, the author of the book, and they were Sayyid Al-Allama Qasim ibn Ibrahim ibn Ahmed ibn Ibrahim. Sheikh Imrani, that was his teacher, and then who taught him this book, and then his teacher was Al-Qadi Al-Allama Ishaq bin Abdullah Al-Mujahid. Okay, he taught Sheikh Imrani's teacher, and then his teacher was Al-Qadi Al-Allama Muhammad ibn Muhammad Al-Amrani, and he narrated from and learned from Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Ali Ash-Shawkaanee. Okay, so there's a direct link. There's only three people between the teacher, one who taught me this book. He only had three people between him and the actual author of the book, Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Ali Ash-Shawkaanee, rahimahullah ta'ala. Na'am. And that is the conclusion. So that's all we wanted to say about Al-Imam Ash-Shawkaanee. So when we can pick up the next time, when we continue the next time with the class, we will be going directly into the first section of the book, which is the section, Kitab al-Tahara, the chapter of purification. And the first section is Babul Miyah, the section dealing with the types of water and what are the rulings and principles regarding water and what water we can use and cannot use to purify ourselves and what are the characteristics of water and so forth like this. So we'll conclude with that. Wa subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Na'am.